Hey, fight fans, how you doing today? What do you say? What do you know? How you doing? Old school saying here. Today I'm reporting from down in the old boxing basement. Used to call it the dungeon down here. Spent a lot of hours honing my skills as an old man, trying to keep pace. Remember what I tell you? You gotta keep moving. You gotta keep moving as you get older. Anyway, let's talk about what happened last night. First of all, I knew what I was getting into. I knew. I didn't expect to see real boxing last night, and I didn't. I tuned in. I wanted to see the event. As someone who follows the game, I wanted to see, basically what was going on. Anyway, I'll talk a little bit about the fight. A little about the two fights. But the main thing is really, what does this say about the state of our sport? You're a fan. I'm a fan. What's going on? What's happening with this sport? Anyway. So the first contest, the first contest was not a contest, and there's no surprise. There's no surprise there. This kid Paul is not going to be confused for a seasoned boxing veteran by any means, but here's a guy who who has a background in combat sports. Again, the skill sets are different, but the training, the mentality, the toughness, the competitiveness, the ability to get in there and compete at that level in the first place. I think the guy's had a pretty good pedigree as in wrestling. And again, while the two sports are completely different, there's a mindset that's identical and a toughness that's basically the same. And the kid trained for a year. My understanding is he got some pretty good training, professional training in that, and more importantly, he stepped in the ring and did a lot of sparring with professional level fighters. So you can see he's got he's got all the basics down, and he's got power. That's something that you can't teach. So he had a huge advantage over Robinson. I was listening to the commentators last night. Just listen to who the heck's commentating. Snoop Dogg. That just goes to show you this was not a real boxing event. It was a show. But anyway, Snoop Dogg doesn't know anything about boxing, but he made a point. Or maybe it was Ray Leonard who said, "You don't play boxing. You don't play boxing." Nate Robinson, great athlete. Great athlete. Was he 5'6", 5'7"? Could probably get his elbow above the rim. That's unbelievable. Great quickness, explosiveness. But boxing, you don't step in the ring unless you know what the heck you're doing. And you know what? To his credit, you got to understand. You could take a great athlete and put him on the baseball field, the football field, or or a basketball court, and their raw athletic ability isn't going to translate into success. Let me back off on that a little bit. Football, maybe. I think there's less skill. Not that I take anything away from those guys. It's more of a pure power type game. If you got speed and you got power, put the ball in your hands. You're gonna be successful. Not that you could do it overnight, but boxing is a sport that requires just such a diversity of skills. And these are just things that you can't learn quickly. It takes a long period of time. It takes a lot of experience. And the techniques in boxing are just intricate. The ability to throw different kinds of punches, the counter punch, your footwork. It's a completely different ballgame. So I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised at all what happened. I was a little worried about Robinson. I thought maybe he had really gotten hurt. When a guy falls forward on his face like that with his arms stretched out, that means that he's out cold before he hits the ground. And sometimes, the concussion from hitting the ground is the worst thing that could happen. But I'm glad to see that he did okay. And hey, you want to make a bet? Let's make a bet just between the two of us. He ain't gonna do this again. He's never gonna do this again. And that's the difference. That's the difference between sports. You got a great athlete, put him on the basketball court, and he gets his butt kicked. He's gonna keep going. But boxing is a different ball game. Now for this kid Paul, the future. He's 23 years old. This is all about making money and building his enterprise. The kid is really a smart kid. But like I said, he's an accomplished. He's got some experience under his belt as far as combat sports. Kid was a Division I wrestler. I'm sure he was very successful in high school, and I'm understanding he also played football. So at 23, if he wanted to really devote his life to the sport, 3-4 years of really being brought along the same way, who knows? Who knows? He's got the raw ability, and he's got some skills at this level. Right now, you put him in against a guy, a decent guy at his weight, he's going to get bombed out. He's going to get killed. But he's building a little bit of a foundation there. So we'll see what he wants to do. My guess is that he's smart. He's not going to be in this for the long haul. He's got bigger plans. On to the second event. Tyson-Jones. Again, no surprises. I wasn't expecting to see, a peaked out Tyson or Jones or anything near that. How do I know that? Because, they're 53, 54 years old or whatever the heck they are. I'm 62 now. I remember when I was 54, I'd come down here and I could bang on these bags, move, jump rope, do the whole thing, and look like a world beater. But at that age that your body just doesn't have it anymore. You can fool some people, but when it comes down and you got to get yourself into competition mode, first of all, the level of the level of stamina required to actually fight is way beyond what you're doing in this kind of training. I think a lot of people were enamored by looking at Tyson on the mitts. Listen, your power doesn't leave you until you're, I don't know when it does. It hasn't left me yet. I'm 62 and I think I could still bang. But, so Tyson looked good at hitting the bags and whatnot. But it's a different ball game when you get in there to fight. So I was not surprised at all. Jones looked, to be honest with you, went during the weigh-in. I said, wow, this guy is not really in great shape. Now, he's a smaller guy. He wants to carry the heavier weight, so he's going to have a little bit more on him. A little bit more fat on him, but I didn't think he looked like he was in great shape, and he tired very, very, very early in the fight. The contest. I'm sorry, but what you basically saw was you saw two guys who fought like they were at their age. The human body is like a car. It's only got so many miles on it. These guys got about. Look, they at one point in time both of them were Ferraris. Tyson was, Tyson is one of the most, if not the most, explosive boxer in heavyweight history. That combination of speed and power. And Jones likewise was a guy who, you looked at him and you broke him down technically. You said, geez, this guy's got issues. I mean, he's got his hands down. He squares up. He throws unconventional punches, leaves himself open. But he got away with it because of his unbelievable natural abilities, instincts, and reflexes. But like I said, okay, so they're Ferraris. But you know what? 170,000 miles in that Ferrari, it ain't running like it did when it was, when it had 10, 12, 14,000 miles on it. So there was no surprise there. Was the fight entertaining? I guess from a certain standpoint it was. It was interesting to watch them, but they were both shells of themselves. Again, absolutely no surprises. Now, the thing that surprised me after the fight, I listened to to Tyson on his interview, and apparently he's planning to build some kind of club or whatever it is. He wants to get a bunch of ex-professional fighters and start doing these exhibitions on a regular basis. I think he's pipe dreaming. I think this was kind of a one shot deal. You watch it and you say to yourself, all right, I saw it. Do I want to see more of this? No. It was a novelty to see this. I would never pay again to see Tyson fight anybody else or see anyone in their 50s fight again. I mean, it's just not. What's the purpose? So that's my take. That's my take on these events. Now, the main point. What does this say about the state of boxing today, folks? I mean, we're fans. You're a fan. I'm a fan. Depending on how old you are. I mean, I go back, kind of a historian of the sport, going back, fighters of 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, remembering those rivalries and those guys that fought 150, 100, 150, 200 fights. Back in the day where you had clubs, you had clubs all over the place. You had fighting arenas. I remember in the city you had Sunnyside Gardens, Red Ridge Grove. You had Madison Square Garden. You had clubs all over the place. Boxing was a big, big sport. I think younger people today don't realize that back in the day it was baseball and boxing. Those were the two top sports in the United States. Basketball was a second thought, and football, pro football, college football was somewhat, popular, but pro football didn't become really popular with people till the 50s. It was all about boxing. And then even when you look at to me, when I was in my 20s, 30s, we're talking about the 70s, 70s and the 80s. You had some great fighters. You had some really good heavyweights. You had Frazier, you had Ali, Larry Holmes, Ken Norton. These were guys who could really fight, and these were competitive fights, and they fought each other, and they fought each other multiple times. Then you had obviously in the lighter weights, you had Leonard, you had Hearns, you had Duran, you had Benitez. I mean, you had these guys who could really, really fight. And again, they all fought each other, and they fought each other multiple times. These were huge events. These were guys who had the skills and the abilities to fight in any era, and they were fighting each other, for big time titles. Today, that's not the situation, and I think part of the problem is all the divisions. Everything is about all the divisions, all the belts. I mean, the multiple belts that you have right now. I mean, what is it to really have a championship belt today? What do you got? The IBF, the ABC, the XYZ. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. What does it really say if you got one of those titles today? It's watered down, and you know what? People are smart. People understand when the product is watered down. And you got guys fighting. I don't follow the sport the way I used to, but I do watch, and I watch some of these title matches. And you look at these guys; they have 22-4 record, and the guy's a champion. How the heck does that happen? So the sport is not where it needs to be, and it's a great sport. The level of purity in the sport is unbelievable. I got a good buddy of mine out there who's a pretty accomplished wrestler, who is in love all of a sudden with the mixed martial arts, the UFC stuff. And him and I argue all the time. He loves the wrestling aspect of it and the grappling. And I just tell him, man, boxing at its purest there's nothing like it, because it's one skill set perfected. It's poetry in motion. It's the sweet science. I'm sorry. All the other combat sports take a second seat to really good quality boxing, and so it saddens me to see that we're in an environment right now where this event last night could actually be promoted in the first place, and then be watched by millions of people. It's sad. It's sad. So what do we have right now? Where the heck are we, and where do we go from here? To be honest with you, I don't know. This is all about the sport has always been about money, but it was at a different level. The level of competition, the number of fighters that you had out there, your best athletes were gravitating to the boxing game. You had situations, as I said, where you had clubs all over the place, and you just don't have it anymore. Today, it's about taking people who, a small crop of people who are involved in the sport, and then making as much money as you can by promoting these fights between guys who just don't have the experience level, and then having all those belts just waters the damn game down. Now you got a couple of guys today. I'm going to talk about one guy today who I think he's probably the only transcendent fighter that I see out there, and that's Crawford. I just see tremendous ability in him. He's probably the only fighter around today, in my opinion, that could fight in almost every era. And here I'm going to say something controversial. I put Floyd Mayweather in that category of guys who were not transcendent fighters. I know he thinks he's top 5, and he's got a lot of people convinced of that. I don't think so. I don't think Floyd even would have survived in the period of time that I talked about before, when you had Leonard, you had Hagler, and you had Duran. I think Benitez would have given him a really, really tough time. I'm sorry, Floyd. I don't think you're in that discussion. And you know what? You go back to the to the 30s, 40s, 50s. Man, at that level, the lightweight, welterweight division, man, you had some guys that were just tremendous. And there's a different fighting style. Obviously, Robinson could fight in any area. He had everything. The technical skills, the hands, feet, power in both hands, everything. But you had guys there who were really, really tough bangers, guys like Carmine Basilio, who could fight in any era. Different game. The refs are going to let you fight a little bit longer. But a guy like that who can just pound and pound and pound for 15 rounds. I don't know if a guy like Floyd can handle a guy like that. That's going to be really controversial, but that's my opinion. Guys like that would have given him a really, really hard time. Anyway, but back to Crawford. Crawford has everything. Crawford has all the skills and abilities. I mean, the first thing that you look at when you're looking at a fighter is you're looking at the body. You're looking at him as a specimen. He's got classic big back, long arms, tremendous reflexes, speed. And then you look at his IQ. He's got a tremendous boxing IQ and the ability. No one since Marvin Hagler. I think him even more than Hagler, who could basically go lefty righty. You look at it, and a lot of times it's a gimmick for fighters. This guy can really fight effectively from both sides. I mean, I just think he's got the entire game. He's got a game that would be exceptional in any era. But other than that, what do you got? I just the Spence guy. I don't see him being that's tough, strong, good puncher. But does he have that diversified game where he can adjust and box and be able to do counter punch? And I don't see it. I don't see him being able to make adjustments. I don't think he's got that kind of ability. So I think all that combined, where you don't have the talent, you got the promoters looking to make the big money, you don't have guys fighting a lot of fights and getting the experience that they need. I don't see how the game could possibly come back. It's just we'll have our occasional big fights that are really, really competitive, that attract attention, but it'll never be what it was. And that's sad. That's sad because, like I said, I think it's it's a beautiful sport. It's a pure sport. And I think we've seen the best days of boxing. Very, very sad thing to say. But that doesn't mean that we should quit. We should keep going on because, like I always tell you all out there, you got to be fighting every day of your life. You're on your back, you got to get up and you got to keep fighting. So like I always say, you got to keep those hands moving, you got to keep that head moving, and you got to fight until the game is over. Have a blessed weekend. Love you all. Take care. Keep pounding, baby. Keep pounding.